Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Digital Central European FPNA board, where today we'll be talking about the key skills and capabilities for the next decade. My name is Hans Gobin. I'm your FPNA Trends Ambassador, and I'll facilitate this meeting for you today. Just so you know, we are joined by nearly 500 colleagues across 68 countries. So as well as 4 panelists, and we're going to have a very, very exciting meeting on this subject. So let me take you quickly through what we have done in the geography previously. So take the time and read through some very exciting topics we've discussed. So take your time and read through it. What is our agenda for today? So today we will look at the FPNA team roles to make a proper FPNA function, and then go on to look at FPNA skills for 2030. We will look also at CPG Europe case study, transformational skill set change. And here you can see the XPNA element, extended planning element coming into play. We will then look at FPNA of 2030. So what is that vision from one of our panelists? And finally, we will look at how technology can support us to develop those skills for 2030. We will go on to do our conclusions and recommendations, and then we will finish off with a Q&A session. So very packed agenda for today. It is now a good time for me to introduce our panelists for today. So members of the panel, if you can join me on the webcam and on the mic as well, as I go along and introduce all of you. So our first speaker for today will be Paul Barnhurst, Director of Finance at DigiCert. And today, Paul will talk to us about top FPNA skills for 2030, his vision and his perspective. Paul, excellent to have you with us again.
Thanks, Hans. It's great to be here. Looking forward to talking with the audience.
Thank you very much. If we now move on to our second speaker, Karin Albertsen, who is Head of Finance, Benelux Nordics at CPG Europe. And Karin will take us through the case study within her own company and how the skill set have changed there. So Karin, very excited for you to be with us today.
Yes, it is. Good to be here.
Thank you very much, Karin. Let me introduce our third speaker, who is Anastasia Kajampini, Senior Director, FP&A at Revlon. And Anastasia today will tell us about her vision for FPNA of 2030. Anastasia, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Hans. My pleasure is mine.
Thank you very much. And finally, closing the loop, we've got Eric Smith, who's Vice President at SAP. And Eric will share with us the vision as how technology can support us to develop those skill set for 2030. Eric, great to have you with us again.
Yeah, thank you, Hans. Happy to be here and happy to discuss the topic.
Thank you very much, panelists. We've got 4 great panelists, 4 great presentations waiting for you. So please stay with us and listen to the very insightful presentation. Panelists, if you can switch off your webcam, I've got a few housekeeping to go through, and then we will move on to our first set of presentations. Very quickly, projects and initiatives, FPNA Trends Group. Guys, you know we are in 27 cities, 16 countries, 4 continents, and hopefully we will start our face-to-face meeting once we can get over COVID and increase those number of FPNA board we have. Also to let you know, we do best practice workshops and FPNA consultancy based on your demand. What is the Digital FPNA board? So let me take you through what it's all about today. 90 minutes is what we are in for. We've got 4 polling questions. We would like you to participate and tell us what you're doing within your organization on those 4 polling questions. We've got an interactive Q&A sessions coming as well. So please ask questions. You can ask questions via the chat box. We will answer quite a lot today. Those we cannot, we will definitely answer them via email. So please send your questions via the chat box, and please direct them to one speaker. You can also network with us directly via LinkedIn, so please do so. The presentation is available for you to download in the handouts today. If not, you will receive a copy of the recording and presentation within 2 days after the meeting. Just when I close the meeting, there is a feedback session, so please give us a minute of your time and give us some feedback around how well we did, but also more importantly, what would you like to hear of in terms of agenda for next team meeting. So please stay back for a minute or so and tell us about it. A very quick thank you to SAP, who's our technology sponsor for today. Of course, we all know SAP, one of the world's leading providers of modern FP&A solutions. So thank you, SAP, for sponsoring our meeting today. So let me take you through very, very quickly a few slides that I've got in terms of what is FP&A team roles. So starting from, of course, the FP&A board maturity model. Just to highlight very quickly here, we did a FP&A maturity model board paper in June of this year, and most of you guys will be conversant with this, but this is an updated version. And what you can see here, the leading stage, level 5, and I've highlighted in the red box, what are those key skill sets that leading organizations have within their FP&A team. So you see multidiscipline team approach, the involvement of analysts, architect, data science skills, continuous skills, training and investment, collaborative ways of working, trusted advisor, the challenging nature, and of course the soft skills. And you will hear quite a lot around all of these skill sets today. The maturity model is in 2 pages. The next page is around process, data, analytics, and technologies. Please have a look at it in your own time. There's a lot of things around what best practice organizations are doing in those areas. So what are those 5 critical FP&A team roles? Having traveled the world, having gone with all the FP&A board, as you saw, 27 different chapters, this is what we've come up with. So it has been adapted slightly, but the new roles we find these days that are very much in demand are the FP&A architect, the FP&A data scientist, the analyst, the storyteller, and the influencer. My colleagues will talk to us quite a bit about the storyteller, the influencer, and a little bit about the data analyst. But I'd like to very quickly just highlight to you what does the data architect do. So the data architect is the bridge between IT and finance, but also strategy. In their heads, they hold a helicopter view of how everything fits together. They have a deep understanding of all the important systems, their architecture, processes, strategy, and how they connect to each other. They are therefore able to design and build the best-in-class infrastructure to underpin the company's strategy. So they have a very, very good appreciation of the business, their key levers, collaborate with end users to create analytic models that are driver-based. And we will hear quite a bit around this as well. What is then the FP&A data scientist? They use skill in predictive technologies such as AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, to uncover drivers and trends that will be used in planning model. Very different from traditional data scientists, as we know, in that they have finance and FP&A background and they understand the business. They are responsible for extracting, cleaning, organizing, combining, analyzing, and presenting data to help executive decision making. Their skill set includes a good knowledge of scientific, mathematical, statistical, and machine learning techniques as well. So these are the 2 that I would like to take you in a little bit more in detail. My colleagues will talk to you about the rest of them. And finally, just to close off the loop, what we now see very different is at the top here, you see the I-shaped team which is made up of experts within their own field. So the architect, analyst, the data scientist, technical skills, and then you have the softer skills, which is the storyteller and the influencer. More and more what we find now, the team are T-shaped. So you have specialists in one area, but generalists in all the others. So they know the business, they know how each other work. So this is the I and the T-shaped skill set. Moving on. We will now talk about top FP&A skills. And to have this discussion, we have Paul Barnhurst, who's Director of Finance at DigiCert. And of course, he'll talk to us about the FP&A skills for 2030. Paul, over to you whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Hans. Appreciate your introduction. And I totally agree with the 5 skills you mentioned and how it's becoming more T-shaped. I had the opportunity to be interviewed when you put together the maturity model. And again, for FP&A skills for 2030, the research papers, and it's always great to talk about FP&A and share some of my thoughts and especially learn from others. And so, as Hans mentioned, I'm a director of finance at DigiCert, global cybersecurity company, and just excited to be here today. And as we go on to my next slide here, you're going to see a little bit of how I like to think of the top skills for FP&A. I bucketed into 3 groups. You think of yesterday, today, tomorrow. And the first thing, if you look through this list, is you'll notice everything that's in yesterday is still in today, but there's more. And as we go to tomorrow, there's even more items. And what that is FP&A is continuing being asked to do more. And not much is being taken off our plate. It kind of started in the old days, heavy accounting, a lot of reporting. That was a big focus, being able to report. Today, you're starting to see more of an emphasis put on business partnering, the data science, the hard analysis, being able to model, and business partnering. As we go forward into tomorrow, some of those soft skills, being able to partner with the business, being able to collaborate, being able to do those roles of influencer and storyteller are going to become even more important. As I like to say that, the baseline technical skills, those really become table stakes for many of us. It's something we have to have. But if we truly want to drive value, we're going to have to start differentiating our skills with those soft skills, the influencing and the storytelling. Those are going to become really important. The other thing that I think we'll see in the future, and if we go to the next slide here, talk a little bit about this, is just the way we plan. Today, obviously, we call the term financial planning and analysis. I think, as we move into the future, it's going to become more broad. You're going to see more of a focus on planning and analysis and scenario planning. So if we look here on the left-hand side, traditional approach to planning, we've all done there. You do a budget or a forecast, and it can typically take weeks to months. I've been parts of budgets that have taken 6 months before we've closed it. You're halfway through the year. Lots of negotiation and back and forth. Sometimes they're bottom up, sometimes they're just run rate, all kinds of different approaches. As we continue to move forward, we're going to see a bigger push, and we've really seen it the last 18 months, but it's only going to accelerate, is what we call scenario planning. So one, it's going to be integrated. It's going to have organizational data in addition to the financial. It's going to be important that you can quickly run different scenarios. It will be near time to real time, kind of on demand. A term we often hear is extended planning and analysis. A lot of different terms for it. Integrated planning, I've heard continuous, I've heard connected. Like I said, the most common is extended. And that's what's coming. Really being able to connect your drivers, your operational data, and being able to run multiple scenarios. So the business can quickly change when these events that seem to be more and more common come, such as, COVID or other black swan events, changes in the economy, crashes, etc. And so that's where I see planning going. If we go to the next slide here, the next part of that is what I like to kind of refer to as a little bit of the soft skills, where I see FP&A going. So obviously we got to do scenario planning. We have to have the technical skills. But the next area is I see 3 areas. There's the storytelling, there's influencing, and then really understanding the business in depth and being a part of that value creation process. So on the first one, storytelling, I like this image. As you can see, it looks like someone, pretending to be Peter Pan, talking to the kids and telling them to a story. I mean, if we all go back in our mind and think about, when we were a kid and a parent or nanny or a friend was reading us a story and how you would picture it in your mind. We've all seen that. Being able to do that can be done with data. Being able to storytell can really drive home the point. And I'll share an example of where I failed to do this in my career, and it really hit home the importance of it. I had this big project I was working on. I'd spent a couple months on it, put it all together, presented it to my boss. He was aligned, presented it to the general manager. They were aligned, head of sales. And so we were meeting with our global CFO to get approval. Put it in front of the CFO, and within a couple minutes, he's like, "This is a terrible idea." And I was kind of dumbfounded, like, okay, what do I say? And then he asked the general manager to join the call. So the general manager called, they talked for about 5 minutes, and he ended up approving the plan after the general manager talked to him. And as we got all done, I was kind of like, what happened? What did I do wrong here? And I talked to my boss and asked him to debrief me. And he goes, your analysis was brilliant. You did great work on the analysis, but your presentation lacked. I had failed to put the presentation and the story together. And so I was unable to influence the decision I wanted. Fortunately, in this case, we were able to get what we believed was best for the business, but it wasn't because of me. It was because someone else was able to step in and help do that last part that I should have been prepared for. And so for me, that's a great example of being able to learn and focus more of our time on the storytelling. It's easy to focus all the time on the analysis. Many of us in finance enjoy the analysis. As we move on to influencing, I was just recently reading a book about influencing, and there were two things they talked about that we all need to influence people or to be influenced ourselves. And the first is, can we do it or can I do it? So are we capable? And the second is, will it be worth it? Anytime you're trying to influence somebody or influence a decision, you have to think back to those two things and say, how can we make sure it's worth it? And how can we make sure they can do it? And if we're able to do those two things, we can influence people. Early in my career, I used to think influencing was as simple as presenting the great idea and everybody would be on board because it made sense to me. And so it would make sense to everybody else. And I had worked on something for quite a while early in my career and presented it. And nobody really got on board because I had nothing to do to influence them. I hadn't made it worth it to them. I hadn't explained how it would really benefit them. I just explained how it would all work together. And again, that was a reminder for me that it's about so much more than just the analysis we do. And then the third item that I think you'll see an acceleration of, and that's really important, is truly understanding the business. I've worked with some people in FP&A that they're just in their spreadsheet all day and they understand their numbers, but they don't actually understand how the business works. If we really want to help create value and be strategic business partners that the CFO and the CEO and the executive leadership team needs us to be, you got to understand the business in depth, be willing to sit down with the customer and focus on creating value. Like I said, it's not enough to just be in the spreadsheets. It's not enough to have the technical skills. In the future, those soft skills are going to become more and more important, and they're difficult. They're hard for a lot of us in finance to develop, but there's something we can do and we can become better at when we put more focus on them and spend time learning those skills and using them. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Hans. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Paul. Excellent presentation, as usual. I think for me, this last page and the value creation process and understanding the business is key. Of course, you talked quite a bit about the softer side of skill set required as technology moves forward. So thank you very much, and thank you for those great examples. Let me ask our fellow panelists to join us now and give us some comments from their side, please. So Karen, if I may start with yourself.
Yeah, what I really like is that you shared a very personal learning, Paul. And you made yourself a little bit vulnerable there, but I think it's actually very powerful that you shared that example. And I think that also shares what we all need to do is to basically become better as we were yesterday. If we really want to create that value for our CEOs and CFOs, we need to learn from our mistakes. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much. Anastasia?
Thank you, Paul, for the interesting presentation. For me, kind of, let's say, going on the kind of, let's say, the importance that you highlighted about, can say, how we can keep investing time on how we can connect the dots, connect with our business partner, and kind of, let's say, drive, kind of say, the business forward. I think for me, kind of say, I think we all correlate with that. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. And finally, Eric.
Yeah, Paul, yeah, great story. At the same time, I also wonder if we're putting too much questions on the skill set of FP&A. If you talk an analysis, storytelling, influencing, you need to understand the business. And then we also see the trend that people stay shorter term in these organizations. So we're asking a lot for the FP&A teams out there. That's my only comment on that. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much. And Karen, Anastasia, I think you brought in a very important point there when you talked about the connector. Amazingly, we're currently doing a paper on skills, which is going to come out in the next couple of weeks. And one of the other roles we see FP&A being demanded of is connector. And also, I think, Paul, you are a connector yourself in your current role. So how FP&A is connecting all of the dots within the organization, as and when we grow into this XP&A structure, more and more of this is being needed. So guys, thank you very much for your comments, and Paul for your great presentation. Let us now hear from our audiences as to what they're doing within their organization. So if we can switch our webcam off, I'm going to launch our first polling questions, which is around, what do you think is the most important FP&A role within your organizations at the moment? And the 5 answers are the analyst, the architect, the data scientist, the influencer, and the storyteller. If you can vote, please, that will be greatly appreciated. So what role do you think is the most important for the future of your organization? Is it the analyst? Is it the architect? Is it the data scientist? Is it the influencer? Or is it the storyteller? I will give it another 10 seconds, so please vote. What is the most important FP&A role within your organization? So let's hear from you. I'm now going to close the vote, and I'm going to share the results. And the results are 5% says the analyst, 17% the architect, 20% the data scientist, 37% the influencer, and 21% storyteller. Paul, can I ask you for a quick insight on what we're seeing here, please?
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of similar to what I would have expected. I'm not, surprised that the softer skills, really, influencer and storyteller are getting the vast majority, right? Most studies show that as we advance in our career, what becomes most important are those soft skills, those are the ability to influence and work with people, and the technical skills become less important. So I think given the audience and kind of where FP&A is going, these results align with what I would have expected.
Yeah, no, absolutely spot on. 37% influencer and 21% the storyteller. Of course, we still see the requirement for data scientists and data architect as well. But as you said, the softer skills are really high up there. So let us now hide this and let us now move on with our presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, carry on sending your questions via the chat box. We will attempt to answer quite a bit of them today. So our next presentation is from Karin Albertsen, who's head of finance Benelux Nordics Group at CPG Europe. Karin, over to you whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Hans. Yeah, if you can flip it to the next one. Yeah, let me quickly give you an introduction of the organization I'm working for. We are part of a global US listed company called RPM Inc. Within RPM Inc., I work for Construction Products Group, which is about 1/3 of the sales of RPM Inc., so about 2 billion euros globally. And what we have in common with our sister organizations is that we all produce, manufacture, and sell construction products, so really in the construction products markets. And you see a couple of brands on the left top slide. What maybe is good to introduce also to the case study I will share with you guys is, if you can flip it back, Hans, I can show you the finance organization, how we are organized. We have finance directors in the regions, and there is basically a combined role for business partnering, FP&A, and then you have people for the commercial organizations and people for the factories. And of course, we also have financial controllers and finance employees taking care of that stuff. Yes, you can flip it, Hans. Thank you. Yeah, so what I would like to share with you is a specific case study. That is pretty interesting because what we are going through as an organization at the moment is that we are going through a sort of big business transformation. We're combining organizations that were very much organized standalone now in a much more integrated, standardized way. And as a part of that, we are also merging factories across Europe. And we also, what we worked on is that we set up a standard costing template in ERP, which we hope makes our life much better in analyzing actually cost prices. Knowing that material prices fluctuate significantly in our business, that is a pretty critical thing for our business in case you want to add the value in the company. And that has then also a pretty much of an impact on the skill set change that is required in FP&A business partner function. Yes, what we did, and I'm not going through all the details with you guys on this, but what we did is we set up a pretty much a costing template where we are allocating costs to primary cost centers from secondary cost centers. And we do that in a standardized way. So what was not in place yet in our company is a standard setup of which element of a cost price is where, and we needed to really standardize that. Then we can flip it again. Yeah, what we see with that template that we developed. So we did that in our ERP system. So it was a pretty big of an investment we had to make for the factories that are using it. At the moment, we have three big factories in UK, Netherlands, and Poland live on the new template. And what we really see is that the insight is already significantly increasing because of the standardization. So you see from the data, because they are presented in a standardized way, you can see, okay, we have price increases. We need to go to our customers. We need to tell them that they need to pay more for our products. We know that we need to recalculate cost because price differences are adding up. So the standard template is in that sense really paying off, and we really can do also a detailed efficiency analysis per production line. There is a lot of insight, actual versus standard costing. So you can see that per product line, per production order. And basically, like what you had in the past, what we all learned in theory is about activity-based costing. That what we all learned is that it's very cumbersome to set that up. But I think what is the good thing about the costing template that we are using right now is that you can automate it fairly easy. So the manual work that was in the past really an offset is actually, with a good ERP system, not an issue anymore. That brings me to the next slide, because what is then the impact on our FP&A folks? Because what you noted is that in the past, people could easily spend a week, maybe even 2 weeks on a new costing release, just because of the transactional processing. So we had to put in the system new intercompany prices manually. We had to do a costing run to analyze the costing run. And right now, basically, the ERP system is completely doing that for us, and we only have to basically tell the story to the people around us. So what you see is that there is much more focus on analytical skills, but also business acumen, storytelling, what happened, influencing skills, what can we improve, but also business partnering. So really understand the other functions. So maybe a nice link to the roles that Hans presented earlier in this session, yeah, what we really need is more architects who are experts on how our ERP is organized at the back end. We need more data scientists who are able to develop the insights, so combine the data from the ERP system. And what is really important for the FP&A business partner roles is storytelling. So what actually happened in the factory. And in that sense, the operations managers in the factory have not so much to hide anymore, because it's pretty clear what happened in the factory. So if they say this is not correct, then we did wrong in the design, which is not the case. So it's also, yeah, making the discussion much more challenging. But that's good, because you can focus more on where you can improve and where you can add the value. What we also discussed around this when we discussed the case study is what you really see is that this goes more to FP&A, so the cross-functional element, so that it's also very important to not just stay on your finance island, but to also go to the other functions, because there is a huge linking. The quality of one department is basically influencing the other department. So it's very important to work more cross-functionally together, and that's really a trend that you see happening right now in our organization. And I really like to see that, because people work much more together, and they develop now better listening skills to, hey, what's going on in that department actually. That's what I would like to share. Thank you for your attention, everybody.
Karen, thank you very much for a great presentation. Really like you know, the detailed case study that you went through. Of course, it is manufacturing, but you know, you shared with us how FPNA is working within the organization, and how the skill set of your FPNA team has had to change. And with the help of technology, how things have improved. Now you've got a tool, you can plan better, you know what's happening within the manufacturing, you know per product what is happening, etc. There's no room for hiding, as you mentioned yourself. So excellent, thank you very much for sharing that. Can I ask my fellow panelists to join us now and give us some comments on Karen's presentation and some insight, please? Paul, if I may start with yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I really like the part where you said, you know, the business can't hide. When we transform things so they're transparent and, you know, we streamline them, it makes it easier to hold the business accountable, which I think is so important as FP&A and helping to create that value. So I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed just the journey, listening about how you improve things and freed up time to focus on, you know, what are those key things that we should be spending our time on. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, Paul. Anastasia?
Thank you so much, Karen Kansi, for the presentation. I would really kind of, let's say, like to thank you for sharing a real life example, which was very technical from one side. But I believe that going through a transformation journey requires a separate set of skills for FP&A. And this is something I think kind of, let's say, we just need to kind of say acknowledge as we're getting through the organization. And the other element that I think kind of, let's say, you touched upon is that breaking the silos across the organization is just a must anymore.
Thank you. Finally, Eric.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Karen, a great presentation. And I think from my point of view, what I find very interesting is that you feel that technology is finally helping you to focus more on the soft skills, and that technology is catching up on your requirements. I think that's the great basis. What I also very much like is that you're focusing on cost price, that you really go into the details of cost price calculation, because if I want to look into the future, I need to have insights on cost price calculation at the moment, and not just go into the future without looking at the past. So yeah, a great love the story. Thanks, Karen.
Spot on there, Eric. Yeah, you need to absolutely know what you're doing right now to be able to forecast the future. So thank you guys very much for all your comments. Let us now move on and listen to what our audiences are finding is their biggest work challenges. So if I've just launched this polling question, So what is the biggest remote work challenges that you guys are facing, especially as we change the way we're working because of COVID, because of all the different black swans, as mentioned, that are coming around? Communication issues and being out of the loop is our first option. Is there anything to do on interruptions? Loneliness and lack of human interaction. And number 4 is prioritization of work. And number 5 is working too much. If you can vote, please. So number 1, communication issues and being out of the loop. Number 2, interruptions. Number 3, loneliness and lack of human interaction. Number 4, prioritizing work. And finally, number 5, too much work. I am now going to close the polling, and I will share the results with our members. So 39% say communication issues, 4% say interruptions, 19% say loneliness and lack of human interaction, 11% prioritization, and 27% working too much. Karin, can I ask you for some comments on what we're seeing here, please?
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting to see that, for example, prioritizing work scores a bit less. So actually, we are apparently pretty well able to prioritize our work from a distance. Communication issues, being out of the loop, yeah, clearly the strongest one, getting the most of the votes. Yeah, I think that that is clear. If you have to do everything through a Teams or a Zoom meeting, it is extremely challenging to have everybody on the same page at every moment in time. And yeah, the latter, working too much, I recognize myself as well. I think we, yeah, working from home makes a very vague border between private and work. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is what it shows us, is that, you know, us as FPNA leaders, we really need to work on that communication issues and making sure that our team is not overworking. So thank you very much for voting, ladies and gentlemen. Please keep sending your questions, and let us now move on to our next session, which is FPNA of 2030. And to do that, we've got Anastasia Kajampini, who is Senior Director of FPNA at Revlon, and she will talk to us about her vision for FPNA 2030. Over to you, Anastasia, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much, Hans. Thanks for being here today. Actually, it's a great opportunity for me as well. So, let's say before we start unlocking how I would feel that the FPNA would look like on a 2030, I would like to bring a dilemma. So I think, as I'm reflecting my career throughout FPNA throughout the years, I always remember various leaders and decision makers struggling between facts and judgment, or what some people would call a feeling. So I think it's just something important that we need to keep in back of our mind, that as we are unlocking our opportunities and our skills to make sure, okay, you know what, we have this right balance between fact-based analysis and judgment, or what we could call human intelligence. Which leads me to my next which is how we can approach things. So on the in the approach, and I think I think we just need to recognize in each organization is in a different stage of the journey. So integrated business planning, this is something I would say has become more paramount than ever. And I totally understand that some organizations would probably accept that having multiple different numbers between finance, sales, manufacturing would be acceptable. But we would have, for example, on the other side, which is probably my school of thought as well, to get more, for example, what we call one number principle. So the other element I would say on the approach is automate analytics and how we can unlock time and free up time on our schedule to think about, okay, you know what, the analysis we have prepared, but most importantly, how we can get on organizing the structure. Most importantly, which is, I wanted to pause and share a real life example that as with the COVID happened, So I remember in the beginning of 2020, kind of, let's say, having a perfect kind of planning for the 2020 year and having everything kind of, let's say, organized and planned very well. But the COVID started and everybody was like kind of getting off kind of, let's say, the hook. And we were trying to get on kind of, let's say, we scrapped the entire plan and had really in a very fast manner to kind of say reorganize everything, which leads on the next one, real-time scenario planning. This is something more and more it's going to become. So literally kind of, let's say, I think we just need to kind of say, make sure how we get there and how we can kind of say approach the business. The things are keep changing on a very fast kind of, let's say, track, which is the next one about risk modeling and how we can anticipate risks and how, for example, kind of, let's say, and I think, and again, back to the COVID situation, which we are all still facing, is that about how we can anticipate risks in our analysis and even kind of, let's say, an alert our kind of top management for anything before kind of we get on a decision making. So, and I think the constant part of this approach, and again, as I said before, each organization will be at a different stage. We need to accept that, okay, you know what, Excel analysis will probably kind of, let's say, support us on this journey. Of course, we're striving, for example, for automation. We're striving, for example, kind of to get more things off the FPNA hands, but I think we just need to kind of, let's say, accept that this will be happening as well. So now, kind of, which is getting on the next kind of slide, is for me the most important is what we call. So, Hans, if you can go to the next slide, please. So what I call kind of, let's say, for me, in the soft skills, what I call the 360 leader. So this is something that's highly important as we're coaching our kind of, let's say, teams on the FPNA and kind of say our finance professionals. So having the CFO mindset on every single kind of day of our career, I think that's critical. And I understand different levels in a different organization, but this is something I can say we need to educate our people. So I won't go touch upon every single thing, but I would like to highlight three. Change agent. I hear all the time, even in our organization, that, okay, we're going to go back to normal. We just need to accept there is no new normal anymore. Change is constant, is out there. We just need to kind of just embrace it, accept it, move on. And I think this is something we just need to also to kind of approach the same approach on the way we're doing, for example, approaching FPNA. Now, how we can do that? Of course, partner. And intentionally, I didn't put only business partner because it would be kind of, I think, again, for me, I'm always trying to keep my radar open. Partnering internally and externally. This is something that kind of, let's say, for me, it's critical to kind of say how we're going to get and unlock this kind of, let's say, journey and how we can kind of say get on a faster decision making. And again, on the influence we talked, which gets on the last one, which is for me, agility. So how we can get more agile as finance professionals, not only in terms of our analytics, the way we run our analytics, but in terms of, for example, how we are approaching kind of, let's say, even on the partnering side. But even, for example, many times we need to just to think out of the box. So I think these are all the key elements. For me, we just need to coach our people and how can see so they can get equipped and they can have this 360 view to come up with kind of, let's say, the right kind of, let's say, stories and the kind of, let's say, the right outcome of their analysis as well. With getting me on the next, how we can get on the path forward. So I'm always encouraging my team, raise your hand and get out of your comfort zone. I know it's being easier said than be done, but I think this is something that kind of, let's say, I always, sometimes I'm 100% sure that you have been faced at some point in your career with a kind of say, does this project, is this relevant for me? Grab the opportunity, embrace it, because this is going to give kind of, let's say, again, expand your curiosity on things that, for example, that's going to help you to kind of say grow and get along in the FPNA journey. And challenge. No, I know that, for example, many times that I think we need to challenge ourselves first on the way we're doing things. Can we do them better? Can we kind of, let's say, improve things? Or maybe we just need to think differently. Or maybe we need to ask kind of, let's say, again, challenge up. Which definitely gonna give you kind of, let's say, getting, can't say, be ready to fail. So I remember once, kind of, let's say, I came up with an idea. It was not the best idea, kind of, let's say, challenging the country upwards. But at the end of the day, what I've learned on this journey is that, for example, okay, you know what? I still can't say the top management was, can't say, being very willing to start thinking differently and changing things. Yes, they didn't buy in on that idea necessarily, but how we can get along and kind of, let's say, grow as professionals, explore and expose. I kind of say, I would say truly, that's the only way of the path forward of the FPNA of 2030. That's the only way we can tackle kind of say things that for can't see either on transformation, change, and how we can get kind of, let's say, on these matters going forward. So Hans, this back to you.
Anastasia, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. There's so many takeaways from me from your presentation. I think one of the biggest one is, of course, this is the new normal. You know, we have to become change agent, and FPNA has to become the change agent of the future. Another key one here is be ready to fail, learn from it, and move on. So, and thank you for giving all the life examples as well. So, can I ask my fellow panelists to now join us and give us some insight into your presentation, please? So, Paul, if I may ask yourself to start, please.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Anastasia. I really enjoyed it. And I think, you know, two things that stood out to me is, first, you know, there really is no normal. Just be ready for constant change. That is the new normal. Be willing to adjust and just embrace it and be agile. And the second is really like when you talk about the path forward is be ready to fail. You know, a quote I heard from a camp that I was part of was failure leads to success. And I love that idea, because if we're not willing to fail, we'll never know what we can achieve. And so I think that's, you know, something that's so important to organizations, and I really appreciate you highlighting that. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Paul. Karen?
Yeah, a lot has already been said, but I really like indeed what you write here, Anastasia, about raising your hand and get out of your comfort zone. Us finance people are typically maybe not the strongest in doing that, but I think that's exactly, yeah, for me, you nailed it there. That's exactly what we need. If you really want to be a true business partner that adds value to that business, you need to get out of that comfort zone. Yes, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's also something we have difficulty in accepting as finance people.
Thank you, Karen. And finally, Eric, your comment, please.
Yeah, Anastasia, yeah, great presentation. I like it. And definitely, if I refer back to the first slide, where you talk about the balancing act we need between fact-based and judgment. And to be honest, I'm not really sure yet what is the preferred method there. I think that's, of course, from a technology provider, we're very much focusing on the facts. And judgment is something a little bit more on the softer side. But yeah, great presentation and learning a lot. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Eric. And just generally, just to let you know that a lot of organizations now are doing some very informal things for, you know, helping people with a soft skill, toast clubs, whatever you call it, offsite with different level of people, just to be able to make people feel comfortable, to challenge each other, you know, to create the culture of acceptance that, you know, things can go wrong. You can challenge people upwards as well as anything else. So, guys, thank you very much for great comments and great presentation there, Anastasia. Let us now look at what our colleagues are doing in our next polling question, which is around how they're building team synergy. So, if I launch this, and then I'll read it out to you guys. So, you know, what is the biggest barrier? What is stopping you guys from having that great team synergy within your organization? Is it a lack of alignment around goals? Second, is it different mindsets that people have? Is it internal competitiveness, knowledge deficit, or is it poor listening and communication skills? If you can vote, please. So first option, lack of alignment around goals. Second, different mindset. Third, internal competitiveness. Fourth, knowledge deficit. And five, poor listening and communication skills. I'll give it another 5 seconds and I will close the voting shortly. Lack of alignment, different mindset, internal competitiveness, knowledge deficit, or poor listening and communication skills. I'm now going to close it and I'm now going to share it. So 38% lack of alignment around goals, 26% different mindset, 12% internal competitiveness, 10% knowledge deficits, and 14% poor listening skills. Anastasia, can I ask you for some comments on what we're seeing here, please?
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Hans. So I would say kind of, let's say, probably not that much of surprise here, but possibly I would say kind of, let's say, this is going back to what we were kind of say probably highlighting in the previous presentation. Breaking down the silos, that's the only way we can kind of, let's say, getting on through these kind of, let's say, barriers. And I think this is something kind of say, yes, always comes from the top management, but we all have kind of say to our extent a part in our hands how we can get kind of say around these kind of, let's say, barriers and difficulties we probably face every day in our work.
Thank you very much. And of course, you've got you know, lack of alignment around goals and different mindset, very close to each other, but making the majority. So again, it's about communication, about making sure things are you know, aligned. So thank you very much for voting, audience. And let me now hide this. Please keep sending your questions. We've got some exciting questions, and we've got an exciting Q&A session coming very soon. So now we've got Eric Smith, Vice President of SAP, who will tell us about how technology can support us to develop the FPNA skills for 2030. Over to you, Eric, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thanks, Hans. So yeah, if I look at that poll and I see the 38% on the not clear on the goals or the alignment of the goals, I translate that also a little bit in regards to planning, because in my view, planning is pretty much the translation of the goals of the organization. And I think if you look back on this particular slide as well, it is that we are very busy in an organization, but at the same time, we're spending a lot of time on collecting data, validating data. And in the end, you can see from the poll as well, we are not clear on the plan that we have as an organization. It's a great reflection of the same survey that we as SAP together with FPNA do on a yearly basis. And you can see 35% of the time spent is on planning and on driving actions and on that insights. And the other percentage is spent on basically non-value added tasks in the organization. And that, of course, we need to switch, we need to change that. And hopefully we are able as a technology provider to help you change your organization. So in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the details on that process and what we see our customers are doing. The first step is all around data, and I think previous presenters have talked about this before. There is more and more data available to the organization, and not only in the organization, but also external data that becomes more and more important for running the business. We need survey results, sentiment analysis to really get a clear picture of where we are as an organization. And then the next step is to do regulatory reporting, create some basic information from that data that we have. And then to Karen's point after that, and that's why I was very triggered by Karen's presentation on cost, on standardization, on cost price calculations, is we need to find that insight. We need to really look on which product is profitable, which customer is profitable, what is my cost price, what is my promotion strategy. So that's all the insights we need to gather as an organization before we even go to the most important step for the organization, is to plan, to take actions in forward-looking type of perspectives. And so this full process from data to information to insights to action, that's what we need to focus on. But you can also see many customers are still struggling on the first steps and don't really get into action taking. And then even better is if we are able to pool all that information and insight and bring it to those users that need it at the right time in the right context on what their particular role is all about. So yeah, this is the main picture as an organization. This is what we need to focus on, and this is how we are enabling organizations to really become insight driven. So in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit also about the changing way of decision making. Yes, absolutely, storytelling important, but we also see, and I think previous presenters talked about it as well, is that the way we make decisions is changing. And we used to do this maybe once a year. We pulled all the data and we made a decision. Then we saw now we are doing that in a continuous loop where we say, okay, every week or every quarter, we go through that same data acquisition and insight driven and making decisions. And then next step would be, okay, where we feel very passionate about is that we use predictive capabilities, algorithms to make these decisions for us. And so it's very interesting to see that we are less focusing on the soft skills, but more focusing on algorithms to make decisions for us as an organization. The second one is more diverse data sources. I said before, transactional data, operational data, external data, sentiment data, all of that needs to come together to make decisions. And we need to get away from all these silos in the organizations. Finance is connected to sales, is connected to workforce, is connected to marketing, is connected to IT. So the business and IT need to work together to really combine all these different data sources. Smart workflows, we want to be able to push that information to the people that need it at the right time in the right context of their job. Now, bridging environments, of course, everybody's aware, as a software provider, we are moving from cloud-based technology or from on-premise technology to cloud-based. So we really need to bridge that gap in that regards. And then if you look at planning cycles, of course, it's all about more granularity, higher frequency, more accuracy in the plans we create. And I heard the topic FP&A before. We need to expand not only to finance, but all these other aspects of the business need planning cycles. So in the next slide, I'll show a little bit of a maturity curve where you see the same thing, where it all starts at the raw data, and then you go and you do your standard reporting. Then you talk about standardization of cost price, allocation engines, where we enhance the data that we have. Then there has been the whole topic of self-service BI. We want the end users to build their own visualizations and their own analysis of the data. But we also need to see that these first steps are very much about what has happened in the future, and they very much leave it up to the end user to get the feeling on what should be the decision. If you go to the other side of the line, now we're moving into the world of predictive. Now we're saying, okay, what if I use a time series forecasting algorithm to really predict the future? Or what if I even go further and determine what should be my drivers as the business? Is it the weather? Is it sentiment data? Is it social media? Is it some of these external factors that really run my business, and they should be included? And then the final step is if we're talking about planning, about forecasting, about rolling forecasting in the predictive model. So in our view, this is the full maturity that we need support from analysis, from analytics. And in the next slide, Hans, I'll talk a little bit about the different planning models that we see. Of course, in the traditional plans, we would plan by amount, revenue by amount, by product, maybe by customer. But then we went through the whole cycle of creating driver-based plans. And we go one level underneath the amounts. We say, okay, now we're going to plan by units, by volume, maybe pricing, maybe cost pricing, to really create higher accuracy in the plans. But if you look in the middle cycle, we also talk about algorithms. Now in the new world of planning, we very much rely on algorithms, time series forecasting, when we look at the past and we apply seasonality trends to really predict what could happen in the future. And then if you go to advanced predictive capabilities, what we show here in pillar number 3 is that we do an investigation of what should be the drivers to your business. And these drivers are not sales, they're not marketing. They could be the weather. They could be how many competitors do I have? How big is the market size? How much money do I spend on advertising? So these particular classification and regression algorithms become very important to then drive the driver-based plan that we show in pillar number 1. So all these 3 new concepts, driver-based, forecasting algorithms, and regression classification algorithms, are now very much part of our planning scenarios. And of course, that also means that the skill set for FP&A is changing and becomes more of predictive, the data scientists plus the architects together. So back to my next slide is where we go back to that maturity model, is where you see, okay, in the beginning, the first few steps is very much related to, okay, I build my reports based on data, and we leave it up to end users to make decisions. And again, this is a little bit where the soft skills and the fact base comes in, because we believe that in that particular set of tasks, it is very much noise and bias based. One person looking at the chart will interpret the chart different than another person, and we make decisions based on that, based on intuition, on gut feel. If you go to the right side of the chart is where we now really put predictive in place, and planning in place, and drivers in place, and classification algorithms in place. And now we're changing the world to higher accuracy, and we leave it up to fact-based decision making over there. But I have to say as well, I've learned also from these sessions that this is very much a technology-driven picture. I agree that there's still storytelling, influencing on top of all of this, what we show in this particular picture. It's a very interesting discussion. This is our focus area in analytics. We can see a changing world, but of course, it is a combination of fact-based and also the soft skills for those people interpreting. Thanks, Hans, over to you.
Eric, thank you very much. Fantastic presentation. I mean, you've shown us the importance of technology. And of course, you know, if you're still struggling, and then this page really tells you, you know, the story about it all. You know, if you're still struggling with your data using Excel, not that, you know, Excel is forbidden. Of course, we do. Everybody tends to use it. But, you know, how do you move along to that autonomous number 3 here that you've talked about? Almost impossible. But
one more comment on that is that we also see that nothing is perfect. So waiting for 100% perfect data and never getting to decision making and never getting to planning is not the right either. And so if you maybe have 80% perfect data and you spend more time on planning on what if scenario, of course that's a better approach.
Absolutely, and this is progression over perfection. Absolutely spot on there. So thank you very much for that, Eric. Fantastic presentation. Let me ask our colleagues and panelists to come and join us and share with us their insight as well. So Paul, if I may start with you once you're ready.
Yep, thanks, Eric. I enjoyed the presentation. And what I really like is how you focused on the data side, because data does lead to insights. You know, storytelling and influencing only gets you so far. You have to have good data. You need a good, you know, technology stack and a good process to help ensure that what you have in front of you allows you to make smart decisions and that you're using the technology that's available today. And so definitely, I think, you know, it complements everything we're doing in FP&A, and having that right technology and that data-driven insight in an organization is just so important. So thanks for your...
Let me make one comment on that, Paul, which is also very interesting. If I look at our internal organization, our salespeople are also doing forecasting, and their judgment is very positive. They're very positive in nature. So their forecast judgment is not the same as what we can reach with predictive algorithms. And again, I'm not going to say who's better, but I think you get the gesture here.
Yep, understand.
Thank you very much. Karen, can I ask you for some comments, please?
Yes, well, I'm just laughing because typically the sales guys are the ones who are very optimistic.
Exactly.
What struck me, Eric, is your very first slide about the time we are spending on extracting and gathering data. And that shows that there is a big opportunity for us out there, for all of us. And I'm not measuring my time, but I was just shocked by that amount. And I think it really shows that if we can limit the time we spend on gathering, extracting data, increasing the quality of data, but immediately get it out of a system or a tool, that makes our lives a lot easier, I think. And if we focus that on the drivers, and I think that's the message you clearly brought to the front, I think then you have something strong in your hands as a finance person.
Yeah, the way I read those numbers, Karen, is that definitely, and I think we do a great research with FP&A trends on a yearly basis. So you see a little bit of a trend. And I think the good news is that we are spending more time on insights and action. I think that's the positive of this year's survey. And that could also mean that we are including more external drivers, and that's why we need more external data. And that's why maybe we take a little bit more time on the data collection side of the house. So it doesn't always is a negative. It could be that we are
No, I agree. In a changing world, you have to change your drivers as well. Yeah. I agree there. Yeah,
absolutely, and we've seen a slight increase this year around on these, which is just fantastic to hear. Even though they are not, you know, a million miles from where they were a couple of years ago, but you know, we are heading in the right sort of direction. So that's great. Thank you, Karen. And finally, Anastasia, any comments from yourself?
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much for sharing that. For me, what it really kind of, let's say, strikes out is that how we can leverage the technology and kind of, let's say, all this driver-based analysis to get on the faster decision making. I probably you would we would all agree that the decision making process takes quite a long time. And I think going back to the previous kind of, let's say, we all touched upon that the change is constant and it's happening really fast. I think this is something we need to kind of, let's say, start getting kind of say more and more kind of say experts.
Yeah, agree.
Absolutely. I think definitely adoption of technology is a key thing for us to move our team, and not just our team, to move our skill set and the organization forward in this day and age of black swans, very definitely.
No, but also on that, Anastasia, I think you showed in your slides very much change management. I mean, technology is one thing, but we need to change people's perception. We need to change their roles. And yeah, that's maybe in many scenarios more challenging than just putting another technology in there. So.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your comments. And Eric, as usual, great presentation. Let us now swiftly move on and look at what our colleagues are doing as far as technology is concerned. So if I just launch our final polling question, please do vote. Let us hear as to what are you currently doing. Are you currently using any modern collaborative technology for FPNA? Are you using any tool? Yes, you are. No, you're not, but you've got it in your plan to do so very shortly. And finally, no, we don't. And we don't plan on implementing anything at all. So please vote. Are you currently using any modern collaborative technology for FPNA? Option 1, yes. Option 2, no, we don't, but we do have plans. And final option 3 is no, we don't, and there's no plans to implement anything at all. So please, if you can vote, I will give it another few seconds, and then I am going to close the voting. I will now close it, and I'm now going to share it with you. Thank you for voting. 38% say yes, they do. Fantastic. 43% say they don't, but they have it in their plans, and 19% say that they have absolutely no plans to implement anything. Eric, some comments on this, please.
Yeah, it's always disappointing. It's always disappointing. I think the first question would be, what do you call modern? And I think in our world, we would not call Excel a modern collaborative technology. So that is, I think, the first thing we need to be clear. And yeah, it's interesting. We believe that technology can help you to move your focus from the non-value added task to the value added task. And that's where you need a technology platform. And I think we all agree on this call, but at the same time, people are not implementing, they're staying with Excel, and yeah, we feel that it's limiting what you can do as an organization.
Yeah, no, very, very definitely. 38% is encouraging, but then when you look at 43 plus, you know, it's almost 60% that aren't at all currently using. So there's a lot of opportunities there that us FPNA leaders have to think about and go forward and you know, look at implementing these modern technology. Sorry, Eric.
No, the other question that comes into my mind, and I think that would be a great poll question for next time, is this they're not implemented because of change management issues or because of technology issues? What I do see is that people do believe, yes, we should go to a technology platform, but the users don't want to move and they don't want to change. So that is definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. A good suggestion for our next polling question next time. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for voting. Let me just hide this now and let us move on to our next session for today. So our next session is key takeaways or conclusions. So I would like to ask my fellow panelists to join us, and we will go around the house and ask for their concluding points or concluding elements. So Paul, if I may start with yourself, what will be your concluding point?
Yeah, I think my concluding point is, you know, technology is going to continue to get better and we need to take advantage of it. We as an organization need to continue to figure out how we drive value creation. And that's a combination of improving our ability to influence the business and ensuring we have accurate data that can help drive those insights, that can help us tell the story and present. And so, you know, I think we're going to continue to see a push forward data-driven insights with an organization that can truly create value by influencing the business.
Thank you, Paul. Karen?
Yeah, I think very clear that we need to review our environment. What are our drivers? Where can we add value? So that has a lot to do with the change, fast changing environment, the risks in our environment. Yeah, and the second part is how do we get our people and the technologies we used aligned with that set of drivers? And that's
Thank you very much.
That's on the table.
No, brilliant points there. So thank you for that. Anastasia?
So for me, I would say one of the key takeaway would be kind of, let's say, as we're moving on the 2030 kind of, let's say, is how we're gonna be maneuvering between the different roles that we're gonna have in FPNA, between what you presented in the beginning, between the analyst, between the influencer, storyteller. I think the maneuver between kind of say the different type of roles would be kind of say critical, and finding the right balance between how we're gonna get better on our analytics and support the decision-making process.
Thank you, Anastasia. Eric, your concluding points, please.
Yeah, my concluding point is I think what everybody else also said. I think for us as a technology provider, what I take away from it is that we need to help you better telling the story. And we don't need to only look at fact-based and technology, but we should also give you functionality that helps you to influence and to help you tell the story to your audience. That's what I take from it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. If you stay on the webcam, we will now move on to our next session. But before we go into the Q&A session, I'd like to remind our audience that we will attempt to answer quite a bit of your questions. So exciting questions coming on. Please keep sending them even till the end of the session. The ones we don't today, we will definitely ask the presenters, the panelists, to answer them via email. So you will get them over the next few days. So please keep carrying on sending your questions. So without further ado, first question to Paul. Paul, thank you very much for sharing the skill set around softer skills, much more importantly around the value creation piece. How would you measure value creation? Is there a KPI for it? How do you do it? Paul, sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. That's a great question. I think, ultimately the first KPI is kind of, the bottom line, what's happening, financial planning. Often, things we help drive, they need to show up in the P&L. So I think that's the ultimate answer of, are we driving value and creating value, is, are we seeing the results in our P&L? Now, depending on what the decision is, there could be different KPIs. If we're helping a sales organization create value, it could be something around different products. If it's something around margin, it could be that. And so I think there isn't a key KPI to say we create value. I do think we need to keep kind of score. And I think ultimately, if we're helping the business create value and drive it forward strategically, we'll see it in the P&L. It will reflect in the bottom line.
Absolutely. What are you influencing at the end of the day is the key thing. There will be very different measures within each organization, within each business unit, as you pointed out, Paul. So you can't lay finger on one, but absolutely spot on there. So thank you very much for that. Question number two to Karen. Karen, in your case study, you did talk about different systems, reporting tools, etc. When merging factories. Did you have the issue of different tools, different system when you were merging with it? But more importantly, how did you deal with trying to put everything into one place, etc.? What were the challenges?
Well, I think the biggest challenge we started with is that we had multiple companies that were completely organized standalone. So in that sense, you are working on transformation, integration with everybody. And yes, it's all, I think the word factory or manufacturing location is then the common denominator. Also the good thing is that we were all part of the same consolidation set of data. So we had a common denominator in the sense of the data we provided to the consolidation system of our mother company. But that was actually the only thing that we had in common. So we actually took that as a starting point, because it at least the consolidation system helped us to have a sort of set, like, to talk about numbers in a standardized way, because that was indeed one of the bigger challenges. Yes, but yeah, and from there it's really a project and a journey to go through. Make sure that you have from all the blood groups in the company, you have people participating in the project. Not too many, but you need to have people from all over the organization, so to make sure that the different perspectives for sure are represented. So that would be a couple of my key recommendations there.
Absolutely, taking people through the whole project is very important. What you pointed out. So thank you for that, Karen. Our third question, of course, is to Anastasia. Anastasia, you took us through FPNA being change agent, and this question is: what % of your team would you estimate accepts that this is the new normal now, and how do you go about making sure that they are a change agent to the business?
So a great question. Thanks, Hans. So I think it all starts on the way, for example, the leaders are communicating, the change and the way that is being approached. So I would say I would really say that yes, probably the first reaction is, of course, resistance to change. But I would really say that, for example, especially for my team, and I'm talking about my FPNA group, is that I would say we are all already embracing that. Again, I think we're trying to learn from each other how we can go through the change and the different approach and drive improvements. And I think for me, it's all about learning and how they can grow, how they can develop. So it's all a matter of how we position the change rather than the change itself.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you very much for that. Eric, next question is for you. Very interesting question. How do you merge internal and external data into the system capabilities to provide the next level data analytics? Integrating external factors like environment, competitive, marketing are challenging, very definitely. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think in the new world of FP&A, from a technology perspective, we are completely open to any type of data, any type of source. So external factors are becoming more and more important. Absolutely. So no issue from a technology point, it's all data. And again, of course, we can integrate to ERP systems easier than to outside systems. But in the end, it's all just data to us.
Yeah. No, I think very good, going on to predictive AI and ML. It's just finding those key drivers, whether it is internal or external. Integration is not the problem. The key thing is just making sure you know what's driving your business. What are those external factors? Then the link to the system is not a big deal at all. So the investment in being able to find out what those drivers are very important, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also where, again, if we go a little bit into detail on predictive, if you look at time series forecasting, which is pretty useless at the moment, because with COVID, the world is completely different. So anything that happened in the past is not really something you can easily predict into the future. So it becomes more and more important to find other drivers that really determine my business into the future. And that's where other algorithms, classification, regression comes into play to really build a better driver-based plan. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Eric. Let us now go into our second round of questions. Here, I will just ask a general question for the whole team, and if you guys can build on it. And the general question is, to you, what are the two important practical steps in developing skills and capabilities for your team? So what are those practical steps? What do you do within your team to develop those skill sets? Paul, if I can come to you, please.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you have to do is identify what are the skills that are most important and that where your team needs the help the most. And that's going to be different for each team, and it's going to be different for each business. Because I can remember, an example, a few years ago, I needed to hire somebody and I really wanted an analyst because I was doing a lot of that work, but I was also kind of filling the role of the data architect. I was the one strong data person on the team. And I knew that was taking up more time because we had really messy data. So I hired the data person and I focused on, letting him develop that skill set and worked on the others in the team. And so I think it's different for each team, but you need to provide the opportunities. You need to decide what you need to focus on and come up with a plan that allows practice and that ensures it's implemented in the organization. Because we've all attended training, and most time you come back, you say, rah, rah, I'm going to use it. And 2 weeks later, you forgot about it. So the key is not only figuring out where the lack is, but how are you really going to integrate it and make it part of the culture? And that's something you have to decide for each situation, team, and organization. There isn't, one magic answer.
Thank you, Paul. Karen, what would be your practical recommendation?
Yeah, it links a bit to what Paul just said. Like, you have a certain, if I have a role available in my team, I try to look at what does the team need. So you also try to have people who are complementary in personality and skill set, so that they can really learn from each other. And then you open up a whole opportunity of peer coaching where people are helping each other, and that means that as a manager I do not have to coach intensively all the people myself, because I probably wouldn't have the time and resources to do so. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. And Anastasia, what are you doing within your own team that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I would say expose the team to the new things, kind of, let's say, ask them to undertake new projects. For us, kind of, let's say, this is something I can say a common practice we would have in the team, that they would undertake new things. They would kind of be exposed with the senior management, would be exposed in driving kind of in their own areas of different initiatives on the FPNA. So I would really expose the team on new things and learn from it.
Thank you, Anastasia.
And of course, and of course, encourage them not being afraid of undertaking this. And sometimes there's a balance between kind of daily work and doing a new project. But I would say, at the end of the day, the add value is very high.
Yeah, so empowering, mentoring,
Yes.
and getting people to do more than what they are normally used to do is what you're saying here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Eric, what will be your sort of guidance as far as technology is concerned, or anything else?
No, yeah, exactly. Not so much technology. I think I quite liked your first slide on the T profile versus the I profile. I think that is definitely a great, again, of course, I'm aware of that type of profile, but sometimes it's good to reinforce that profile, because I completely agree that we need to be a broader set of knowledge and skills in the FPNA organization. And yeah, it's
fantastic. Thank you very much for answering those questions, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to stay on the webcam, I've got a few closing slides to go through, and then we will be finishing the session. So we've talked about it. I've talked about it. Eric has also got a snapshot as his first slide. Please go and have a look at the FP&A trend survey. Karen, you highlighted how important that those two lines were in terms of how much time are we actually spending gathering data rather than gathering insight. So please, the link is there. Go and click on it, download the survey, and go through it. Very, very detailed survey that you guys help us produce this year, and quite insightful. So please do so. For your diaries next year, we've got two very exciting meetings coming up. So Inside the Crystal Ball, top trends shaping FP&A in 2022 and beyond. So of course, we're starting to talk about next year. Please book it in your diary. We've got January the 20th for that one. And the second one, which is very much in line with what we've talked about today, is skills for the future, best-in-class FP&A teams. How do you go about building these teams now? So that one is on January the 25th. Please, again, book that in your diary. Moving on, good time to say thank you to our technology sponsor, SAP. So SAP, thank you very much for making this possible. Very good time to say thank you to our panelists for great presentation, great insight, and for answering all of your questions. And of course, we've got lots of other questions as well for you guys to answer via email over the next a week or so. Ladies and gentlemen, please keep sending your questions. We will answer them all. And very definitely a big, massive thank you to our audience today for participating, for sharing with us their insight as to what they're doing within their organization. And before we close off these sessions, please do remember, we have a feedback session at the end when I close the session. Very important for us to know how we did, but very also important for us to know what would you like to hear from us next time. What are those key burning topics that you're dealing with yourself that you would like a little bit of help with? So please stay back for a minute or so and give us our feedback. And also, please keep connected to us. And here are all the different ways of keeping connected. So please do so. And with this comes the end of our meeting for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening, and thank you for joining. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.